Welcome to our special roundtable discussion of the fifth album by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Long After Dark. The album turns 42 years old on November 2nd. The deluxe edition will be released on October 18th, featuring the newly remastered original album from the original analog master tapes, plus a second LP or disc containing 12 rediscovered tracks, including seven previously unreleased, all mixed by longtime Heartbreakers and Mudcrutch engineer Ryan Olyate. The liner notes for the deluxe edition were written by rock journalist and fellow Tom Petty radio host David Frick. A little love for David. With commentary from producer Jimmy Iovine and the legendary Cameron Crowe. And some amazing archival photographs by Dennis Callahan, Neil Preston, and Aaron Rappaport. Here to help us through this era-defining 80s classic album from the Heartbreakers, please say hello to Mike Campbell. The ever-present Mr. Ben Montench.
Howdy.
Engineer mixer Ryan Olyate.
Hello.
And of course, the wonderful Adria Petty. So my first question is...
I have a question.
I'm sorry, sir, but we're not taking any audience questions during the show.
I'm sorry. My name is Cameron. I happened to have been on the RV on the way to the You Got Lucky video shoot, and I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Why was Heartbreakers Beach Party only a B-side and never an A-side?
Mike, you co-produced that record.
Well, we never took it that serious. We thought, it was just an in-between songs jammer. Tom was good at making up jokes on the spot. Heartbreakers, Beach Party. We didn't take it that serious, And it probably should have been a single. We'd be more famous now, I think.
Thank you very much.
By the way, the film Heartbreakers Beach Party is on the big screen in theaters in selected cities across North America on October 17th and on October 20th, which is Tom's birthday. It had only one airing on MTV back in 1983. Cameron, is the reason that it had only one airing was it was just too good for MTV?
I think it was under the spell and the control of the Heartbreakers themselves. There was nobody looking over our shoulders, so they made sure it was true to the music and true to the fun and the brotherhood and the spirit of the time, and that's why it hopefully lives forever along with the music. Yeah. And thanks.
What prompted the idea for you to make this film in the first place?
The idea was to do, I'd been a rock journalist and I'd written about the band for a few years, and I always loved the band. I kind of planted a flag at Rolling Stone where I was working for them. And it came time to do like a video profile. And I was a little nervous about being on camera, but they made me feel so comfortable and really took the cameras and me behind the scenes for what the band was like at that time. They were on fire. They were on the precipice of all that was to come. And I was able to talk to them about all kinds of stuff. And Tom was kind of deeply passionate about all that was going to happen for that band and all that they had already accomplished. And it really feels like a portrait and a snapshot of them at a really wonderful crossroads, which Long After Dark is all about.
And the idea for it to live again in 2024 on the big screen, how did that come about?
After the Wildflowers premiere, I was talking with Adria Petty and Jeff, her husband, and Adria said, why don't we put Heartbreakers Beach Party, the long-lost 80s classic, out again? And in a world where people say things like that and never follow up, she completely followed up. And so we thank you, Adria. And And thanks to the guys for providing us so much wonderful footage. So we went back and put some outtakes together. So there's an additional film that's about a half hour that we added to it. But it's polished and kind of ready for current time. And it really is beautiful how much fun and hijinks and also great music that the band is responsible for making sure was a part of it. And that's why it's not like something that was made by MTV. It really was made by the guys. So thank you then and thank you now.
Cameron, the great Cameron Crowe, you're leaving out the best part of the whole story. On the bus ride out to the desert, you're not aware that you inspired the song I'm Stupid right on.
Right on.
And I want to give him credit for that now.
Thank you, Mike.
I understand last year sometime you and Adria took a car ride together to listen to Long After Dark. What was that about, and what did you come away with after spending that time uninterrupted of listening to this record?
That is not only a strong record, that is a strong record to sing along with. And so we were those people on La Brea kind of shouting along with the songs, and it really holds up in such a great way. And the outtakes are also remarkable for that album, as I'm sure you guys are going to talk about real soon. But it's the spirit of that time, and it's timeless, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about, I guess.
Adria, what was that car ride like for you?
Oh, I always love any time with these guys. They're all my heroes. So, I mean, we just really sang along to the songs and got back into the record after looking at the footage and kind of looking musically at where the band was at that time and looked at the stuff that was left off, because Tom was talking about that stuff with Cameron too at that time, and just amazing. I mean, just awe-inspiring. These guys are like gods to me, and like amazed by what they created and how much wasn't released. It's insane.
One last question for you. Did the title of the film Heartbreakers Beach Party happen before or after the song Heartbreakers Beach Party?
I believe they shared the song with me, and it immediately became a kind of a rallying point because we were all kind of laughing about Elvis movies and that Tom had met Elvis on the set of Follow That Dream, and so it felt like there was a kind of a little Elvis spirit going on, and that song is such a fun kind of romp of a song. It just felt like, wow, this should be the title, and. I remember one thing when Tom saw the first cut of the movie, it was a little traditional, and he said, can we make this more like a joint passed around between friends? And they took cameras to Europe, and the band, we weren't even a part of it. The band did some filming on their own, some wonderful stuff that's in the film, including a piece where they come off stage. The guys should talk about it. They come off stage and are sent into all these different rooms, but none of them are their dressing room, and that includes a tennis court underground. And Tom's kind of upset about it, and it's a great little routine that they did that the guys who made Spinal Tap saw before Spinal Tap came out and added a sequence like that into Spinal Tap. So they actually are responsible for one of the great moments in
Hello,
Spinal
Cleveland.
Tap as well. So we hail them for that.
The original Spinal Tap, ladies and gentlemen.
We played a theater or something in Louisville or St. Louis. St. Louis. And you had to go kind of from under one building to the next to get to the dressing room. And we actually got lost trying to find the dressing room or trying to find the stage. So, we were Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap.
The new deluxe edition features an extended version of Heartbreakers Beach Party that runs a minute longer. Ryan, can you tell us about finding the original master for this song and what you discovered?
Well, what they had done is when they mixed the album, they had taken the multi-track and did an edit on it. So basically, there was an edit on the stereo mix, and it turns out the actual take goes longer. So that had the intro where the band's just kind of trying to find the groove and just falling into it. And then it's got this, and then it has an extra a organ solo. It has an extra verse and an extra chorus. And it also has, in the intro, Tom giving the band some direction. Basically, you know, when you guys say yeah, I want it to be as loud as you can do it, you know. And so it's kind of fun just to kind of be behind the curtain a little bit. And I think that's one of the things I love about these kind of projects, is because you get to include things like that to help people, you know, get in the room with the band and really feel what it was like making these records.
I didn't remember putting that much effort into it.
Cameron Crowe, thank you very much. Thank you. We just heard the song Change of Heart. If I may quote Tom from Paul Zolo's book, Conversations with Tom Petty, he says, I was trying to write an ELO kind of song. I think the inspiration was Do Ya. I was a fan of ELO, and I knew that Jeff Lynne was in the band The Move. In fact, Benmont would get their records imported from England. Is that true?
This is true. This is true. And the Move did Do You first, and then when Jeff got to ELO, he went, hey, wait a minute, we can make this really big, and he did.
Mike, were you and Ben also a big fan of the Move?
I wasn't until Benmont turned me on to them. I had never heard of them. Benmont knew all kinds of records I'd never heard of, like Roxy Music and all kinds of crazy stuff.
It's true.
Daddy Cool from Australia. He was always turning us on to this wacky
Daddy
stuff.
Cool from Australia, I heard on the radio late one night driving home in Gainesville, and John went over to Tom's house, maybe for the first time, and he said, have you ever heard this record? And he put it on. So it was an independent discovery. What a band.
Tom's other quote about Jeff Lynne was, so I actually wanted Jeff to produce our second album, You're Gonna Get It. I don't know why it never happened. I think he was too busy, or he didn't do outside projects at the time. Had you heard that he was looking to have Jeff come in?
I do remember that. And I remember for some reason Jeff said no. It worked out anyway.
Yes, I think so. I think Jeff might have been too much for the young band in 1978 with his
Could
working
be.
style.
You know, he showed up at just the right time.
Speaking of producers, Long After Dark was the third album in a row, the third in 4 years that you worked with Jimmy Iovine and engineer Shelley Yakis. Certainly Damn the Torpedoes and Hard Promises were very successful. Your thoughts at the time on working with Iovine one more time, Mike?
Jimmy Iovine is a one of a kind. He's a kind of producer that not only makes the record, but when it's done, he goes to every city in America and every radio station and knocks down the door and makes them play it. He's an old school producer who just will not stop. And his whole goal was, we're going to make the best record anybody's ever heard. You know, the next song, this is going to be the best song anybody's ever heard in the whole life. And he was driven, and he had a great engineer, Shelley Yakis, who was responsible for the sonics mostly. But Jimmy was the slave driver, and he had a vision and an energy, and he would not be denied, and he's gone on to own the music business, I think. And he's a good friend of mine. He always treated me really well. And he would say, okay, we got the tracks. And Jimmy would say, okay, Mike, get the long chord with the guitar and sit here by me. We're going to finish this record, you know. And so I love Jimmy. And it was our third record with him, and we were getting maybe almost starting to get a little too familiar with the producer, which happens. And maybe we were both ready to move on to different things at that time. So that's the last of our little dance together.
Benmont?
I love Jimmy. You know, I was lucky enough to start playing freelance sessions when the Heartbreakers weren't working. It's because Jimmy brought me in to play on a Bob Dylan session and on Stevie Nicks' first solo record. And I got in the loop. So I owe so much to Jimmy. I think he's a great producer. I wish he'd go back to producing. He conquered the world. Go back to producing. But he's a song guy. I don't think he would let Tom alone. I think he would say, you can write a better verse, you know, you can write a better bridge. And he, like Rick Rubin and like Jeff, they were guys that Tom would listen to about things like writing the song, the most important thing. Yeah, I love Jimmy.
Iovine had a recent quote about the album. Long After Dark sounded like Dylan's positively 4th Street. Sounded like one of those records. By the way, I think it is. Adria, as you look at this record, and I think you told me once, it's certainly very much a product of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
To you, how has it stood the test of time?
Well, I mean, I think that the Heartbreakers and my dad, they had their own way of making things really at a high level, that Beatles good standard. And I think that, this record's unique because it does have that vitriol. It's a little darker. It's a little more critical. I think You Got Lucky, Change of Heart, they're sort of these, or Straight into Darkness are like pretty intense, tortured love songs or sort of indictments to someone, like Positively 4th Street. And I think that it stands the test of time because I think, first of all, this era is really important to a lot of people. I mean, even Jacob Dylan is like, I remember the exact age I was when I first heard this record. So does Cameron. I mean, this was such a major moment for him in 1982, 83. We saw Jimmy Iovine the other day in New York, and the president of Republic Records told me he was at a German Long After Dark show where they kept having these brawls because they were all near army bases. His dad was in the army. And he said it was the best show he'd ever seen in his life, never forgot it. This record stands a test of time, not only because it has a hit song with You Got Lucky or Change of Heart on it, but because it's really good. And it's really awesome to hear the other half of the record, because I think Jimmy and Dad, sequencing this record with Mike, got a certain view of it, of what they made at the time. But even Tom himself in Running Down a Dream said he regretted leaving 3 or 4 songs off, and I think those have been reunited. I mean, the talent of everyone in this band is so sort of on another level that we took for granted. I mean, me and Mike's daughter talk about it all the time. Like, we just thought everybody had these incredibly, like, handsome, like, well-dressed, dynamic, kind of dudes, around, and we didn't realize, like, how talented and extraordinary they were, because it's all we knew. But now we look back at it, and when you're able to go in with Ryan and look at an 82 archive, and someone sends you a bunch of reels of uncut, Heartbreakers Beach Party era footage, and you see how close these guys are when you see these music videos, and how incredibly talented they are at reading each other's minds and creating this really high vibrating, even if it's a negative song, right? A real high vibrating message that people can see themselves in or relate to. That's why it stands the test of time, because it's really good. It comes from a really pure place of craft and also not taking yourself seriously. I mean, you call that movie Heartbreakers Beach Party like clam bake or beach blanket bingo for people who are my age or younger, right? Who are like, what do you mean, Elvis? Like, what does that have to do with a beach party? Well, it's basically self-sabotage, right? Because who knows what a Heartbreakers Beach Party would be? But it's just a sense of humor and irreverence that, hey, this music's so good that even if I put it in a brown paper bag, you're going to find it,
One of your dad's quotes about Long After Dark: it's a tough record because I never knew what it was. I didn't know if we were making the right decisions about songs. There were songs being left off that record that were really good. One of those leftover songs is something that you and Tom wrote together, Never Be You, first released by Maria McKee on the Streets of Fire soundtrack, and then a #1 country hit for Roseanne Cash. Congratulations. How did this collaboration with you and Tom come about?
I've always written songs, and I had a song I've written that I liked, and I gave it to Iovine. He says, I love it, I really love it. Take the melody off, take the words off. I'm giving it to Tom. I'm like, well, I kind of like him, but, give it to Tom, And that's how it came about.
Were you happy with the other versions that came out first?
Very happy. I wound up playing on all of them. It was wild, and they're all different. I like all of them, but the way Tom sings it has a certain special kind of a longing in it. Roseanne sang it beautifully, and so did Maria. but there's a difference in the way that Tom sings it.
Yeah, there's like an ache.
Yeah, there's a different kind of ache.
That was Keeping Me Alive, recorded live at the record plant in Hollywood for the French TV show Hooba Hooba, featured on the Long After Dark Deluxe Edition. We are talking about it with Ben Montench, Mike Campbell, Ryan Olyate, and Adria Petty. I'm Mark Felsut from Tom Petty Radio. You guys spent, I guess, a day, maybe 2 days at the record plant doing this TV show, recording a bunch of songs. What do you remember about this day?
Well, we were recording at the record plant, so it wasn't a stretch. Did they come in while we were making the record, Mike, and we just set some time aside? Because the sounds were all set up.
I don't remember.
I think they did. I think they came in while the actual recording was, because Jimmy and Shelley were there, and they remembered it as session work. But I mean, when you see these recordings and the subsequent bonus material from what we're calling in the archive, it was called Frog TV. We've changed it to French TV, for our French brothers and sisters.
Ooh la
But
la.
out of respect for Paris, but we went through it and found some pretty incredible alternate recordings. And my personal favorite, which I got a nice, good 2-hour conversation with Ryan about, was the Between Two Worlds recording.
We will get to that.
Yeah, but the Keeping Me Alive, I mean, that's a strong childhood memory, seeing the footage of that in Heartbreakers Beach Party and then never, ever hearing that song ever again.
Keeping Me Alive was one that Tom, I'm sure that's one that he was talking about. And at the time, I remember just saying, hey, what about Keeping Me Alive? And I think that he or Jimmy, somebody said that it just didn't seem to fit the rest of the record. And to me, it's like nothing on the White Album fits with anything else on the White Album. So Keep a Little Soul, Keeping Me Alive, Never Be You, go for it. But a thing to remember is CDs may have just shown up. And a record has a finite amount of songs you can put on it. A CD, you can put tons of stuff, and we were making records, so you couldn't put everything on it.
I always said Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers outtakes are better than anybody else's good stuff.
I'd like to say about Keeping Me Alive, which is obviously an Everly Brothers nod, which Tom was really good at. But what I love about that song is the harmony. Stan Lynch does not get enough credit
So good.
for singing with Tom all those years through the first 5 albums. On stage, it was always Stan hitting that Listen to Her Heart high note. All those harmonies were right in sync with Tom, and when they did Keeping Me Alive, to get that Everly Brothers thing, those two had it, and it had a lot to do with Stan matching Tom's phrasing and all that.
Absolutely.
So he doesn't get enough credit for how important he was, especially on that song.
That's true.
Long After Dark was Howie Epstein's first record with the Heartbreakers. Was he in on the 1981 sessions for Del Shannon's album?
Yeah, I think
Well, he
was.
came in and did he come in and sing because he didn't play bass on the tracking. He didn't play bass when we tracked it.
I think he was around at that time. I don't know in what capacity, but I think that's when Tom met him.
Tom met him during that time and said, "This guy, God, can he sing?" True.
Did Howie have to audition
Yes.
for the band?
Yes.
Were there any other singing bass players who also auditioned?
Singing, I don't think so. There were other bass players. They were all really good, but they weren't the one. And to me, when Howie walked in, and Tom, for some reason, we started playing Surrender, which had never come out. And Howie knew it. He had it down. He likes the band. He wasn't showing up just for a gig. And the second he played the first note, I was like, this is a guy. I don't know what Mike and Tom thought, but I thought he was a guy right away.
Yeah, Howie just was immediately there. But I do remember no auditions, but some other names that were thrown around as a replacement for Ron Blair, which is ridiculous. But Chris Hillman's name came up at one point, who he would have been good. Paul McCartney.
Who's that?
No, but Chris Hillman was certainly a consideration because the Birds thread. I'm curious how that would have been. But Howie came in and there was no more discussion. You know, he just had that harmony that Tom loved and the sound and everything.
Love at first sight.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing too. He had the right personality. He had such a warm disposition and was such a cool person.
To have the right personality in this gang,
Yep.
it was really important.
They called him a little wiggler. The first gig we ever did with Howie, live, these two girls came back and they go, we want to see the little wiggler. And then he was in the band. You know?
That was the final test. We're going to play a song from Disc 2 of the Deluxe Edition. This first appeared on the playback box set. It's called Turning Point. Ryan, what's different about this version?
Well, the version on the box set was a little bit lighter. It didn't really feature the drums. And when I heard it, it was like, this is such a good track. And I thought, well, wow, what if we mixed it like the rest of the album, like the original album, and just gave it that kind of intensity? And so I did my best Jimmy Iovine, Shelley Yakis impression, and and really tried to capture that vibe with that song. That's, you know, they cut it at the same time as all those other songs on Long After Dark. So I just kind of wanted to slot it into that place, and I love that song. It's just such a strong song. It's you know, it on every level.
I think this is my favorite of all the extra songs on the Deluxe Edition. Mike, tell us about the writing of the music for You Got Lucky and how the synthesizer became a focal point.
Don't get mad at me, Ben.
I'm not mad at you, Mike.
Ben was against synthesizers, but at the time. But that was written at home on a little cheap Casio with 3 fingers, and then I did a demo, and Tom liked it, and it was a drum loop that Stan had made that I wrote to, and we went in to cut the record and tried to play it. We couldn't really play it right, so we recreated a new drum loop. And the funny story is, Ben Mott was, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, he didn't want to play synthesizer because it sounded like a synthesizer. And at the time, synthesizers were part of the oral landscape on radio. And I didn't particularly care if it was a synthesizer or not, but Jimmy did. He wanted it to sound like the demo. And so Ben says, I don't know, I'm not playing a synthesizer. And Jimmy said, let's get a synthesist in here. And they brought a guy down with a synthesizer. And he was a synthesist. And he sat there, listened to the demo, and he kind of tried to mimic the sound that I made on a little $50 thing. And then Ben begrudgingly played it. And thanks, Ben, for not resisting that. But you could tell me if I'm right or wrong about that, but I don't think you were too happy about the synthesizer, were you?
You're mostly right about it. I liked the sounds on your demo more than the sounds that we got on the big-time synthesizer. We tried to cut it with a little Yamaha that Mike had, brown Yamaha, and we tried to do the sounds on that for the synth sound, which was better. And there was too much of a buzz. And I think that actually you would use the drum machine in the synth, and it has that beat or something like it. And then Stanley made a loop when we cut the track and played all this great hi-hat stuff over it.
Also,
but,
I should give...
if you write a song like that, I don't care. You want me to play it on a kazoo, I'll play it on a kazoo.
But thanks, Ben. It came out really good, and when we were doing the record, it came to the middle of the song, and I didn't want to do a guitar solo. I don't know why, but Tom said, no, you shouldn't do a blues solo, but you should do like something like Clint Eastwood. Right. And so I learned the keyboard line, da 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 da, down, 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 on a Strat, and that's the solo on the record. So Tom directed that piece there. He was good at that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I hear.
And that kind of leads to the video for You Got Lucky, because it's like,
Well, that's where
it's
we're
like
going next.
Morricone.
The video, MTV's only a year old at the time, and this video for You Got Lucky is really sort of ahead of its time. Adria, can you talk about, I understand the video's been cleaned up and reissued, and
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, the whole reason we're here is because our archivist sent me some footage of all of these guys in a caravan going down to shoot this music video. And it starts with Tom and Ben with a synthesizer singing Viva Las Vegas and making up songs about being groovy desert dudes. And I fell asleep watching it. I mean, it was so great. I think I watched it for about an hour. And then, we got all of this stuff up-res to 4K, so now the video is in great shape. But I found out in the process, because we have so many loving people that work on this estate that really care about everything and the band and all their contributions, that apparently Michael Jackson called Tom and said he loved the video and he loved that it was a film, and then made Thriller the same year. So it was an inspiration to make a cinematic music video. I think my dad was very subtle but very brilliant at marketing his band,
But Jim Linehan had a lot to do with that.
Oh yeah,
too.
and Jim Linehan wrote
Our lighting director.
He was a singer from Mudcrutch. For those that don't know, went to high school with Tom, grew up with these guys, was part of the original Gainesville crew, a big posse of us that grew up together with each other's children, etc. His children will be at the screening tomorrow. It's a little emotional for him, but he's sending them the kids, and he wrote this with Tom, and they really wanted to write like a desert epic. I mean, the outtakes are so cool. You guys look so amazing, every one of you. But yeah, the video was a big defining moment for this record, and actually, Jimmy Iovine has a mural in his house of the desert scene of the band standing in the You Got Lucky video. If you look at the EPK, you see it in his house. It meant that much to him.
I just remembered something too. At the time, video games had just come out, and they were taking off. And there was a lot of press about it's going to kill the music business. It's going to wipe them out because nobody's going to listen to records. They're only going to play video games. And in the video, there's a little section where Howie sees a video game and he pushes it into the dirt. It was just kind of a way of going, oh, really?
Well, influencing Spinal Tap on one end of the spectrum and Michael Jackson on the other end of the spectrum. That's your dad. We have another previously unreleased song from the deluxe edition of Long After Dark. This is called Don't Make Me Walk the Line. Either of you two remember this track, Benmont?
Over to you, Mike.
I don't remember that one very much, honestly. It was just another track we cut in the process and got shelved. I can't remember anything specific about it that's interesting.
The hook is, oh, you're so fine. Don't make me walk the line. It's kind of like a Cars song. It's like a pop song. It's a real anomaly in the catalog. I mean, across the whole 40 years.
The line, but I thought it was a Johnny Cash song.
That's another version of Walk the Line for sure.
And it's got synthesizer in it.
This one does have a synthesizer in it. I wonder if Ben was playing it.
I probably was, but he has an ARP string ensemble, which was on a million records then, and he played it on the demo for Change of Heart. He didn't usually bring demos at this point, but he had one for Change of Heart, and he had one for A Wasted Life, which is a gorgeous song. And he said to me, I want you to copy what I did on the synth on that for the string sounds on Wasted Life and on Change of Heart. So he was going to see if he could go somewhere else musically. He always was.
I found this quote from Tom about the song. He says, I remember it really came to life when we turned it over to the piano. We were trying to do it as a guitar-based song. When it got turned over to the piano is when it really started to show what it was all about. Ben?
Straight Into Darkness?
Yeah.
Yeah, he showed me the song, and I'm like, this is fantastic. And then said, play something. And I have no idea why, but my memory is I went, okay, and went bang and went the piano licks in it. And it went over, so I kept it. But it was such a good song, a really good song like that. And Tom had this thing going on, and Tom and Mike had this thing going on. There was going to be a melody that was going to tell you, without you having to think about it, what the hook was going to be that you would play to complement the vocal melody. And Fade into Darkness was like that because it became everything.
Do you remember it more?
I
when it was a
remember
guitar-based
that
song?
piano, it really makes the song, and it's just the four notes, gang, 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 gang. It created the mood, and I come in on the guitar jamming against what Ben might play, playing different notes, but in that four-note motif. And, of course, then the lyrics. I mean, that's one of Tom's most passionate lyrics. And the imagery, like being on the 747, and it's just so romantic. But the piano really did make, in my opinion, did make the song. It set up the mood. And live, it was really good. We could stretch it out a little bit live. And it had a bit of a Birds thing and a bit of a Hollies thing. I don't know what it was about it, but it was the piano that made it.
Well, thank you.
Another cool discovery of Ryan Olyates from the deluxe edition of Long After Dark is your cover of Wild Thing. Ryan, tell us about finding that song in the archives.
Well, when I found it, it was like, wow, they really produced the crap out of this one, you know. So it was a, you know, there was a lot of overdubs of the Wild Thing choir, you know, and it's obvious they were having far too much fun because they kept on throwing more vocals and things at it, you know. And Tom's lead vocal, his live vocal, is just so fantastic, and it's such a fun song, and you could see they were just having so much fun with it. You know, it was one of those things that it just shows when everyone's in a good mood. It's just infectious, and when you have a song like that, that's just such a great song anyway. It's like it was, you know, fantastic.
And it was the 80s, so there's no chance that any illicit substances were involved.
The Heartbreakers weren't known for including a cover song on an album, so how and why did this recording of Wild Thing happen?
See my previous comment.
So good. You know, I heard some folklore, and I don't know if the band can confirm it, but at times people would come into the studio and say, Tom, we want you to rock, you know, and I think there's some folklore of like, if they ask me one more time, I'm just going to send them Wild Thing. You know, and I think that this was sort of maybe a bit of a late night barn burner or something. Like to Benmont's point, there were quite a few substances in 1982 around that I remember.
I think it's like Ryan said, we're just having fun. It was the way I remember it is we'd been working really hard with Jimmy Iovine on that record, and you can get sometimes really like self-conscious and paranoid about your own, is this good or am I cool? And just like all mental. And then we were talking about songs, and somebody said, what's the best song ever written? And somebody said, probably Wild Thing. And we go, let's play that. And we were just releasing energy and stress from the session. And foolishly, we listened to it back. We thought, that's amazing. We had to put it out as a single. So if it's going to be a single, it's got to have lots of stuff on it. And it went down the hole.
We just heard Finding Out, again another track from the French TV show Hooba Hooba, recorded at the Record Plant in 1982. Mike, you wrote the music to the song. You give us a little.
Well, yeah, let me clarify something. I did write the track, which is probably me trying to be Pete Townsend. The music is very suspended. But I got to give Tom credit. I had the song pretty well written, and he wrote it, but it didn't have a bridge. And he wrote the music and the words to the bridge, which really lifts the song up quite a bit. So there's an example of where the demo I gave him wasn't really realized until he added some music as well, which he sometimes did. He was pretty good, too.
2 months before the release of Long After Dark, the band is headlining Day 2 of the US Festival in front of 100,000 people. Very nice. Let's hear it for the US Festival. I was there working and was so honored to see, hung around all day just waiting for Tom and the Heartbreakers to take the stage. What do you remember about the US Festival?
Me?
Yeah.
Funny you should ask. Yeah, we were happy that day. And it was just a big like sea of people. It's like I think it was Howie's second gig with the band, like Welcome to the Big Leagues, right? But the thing I remember the most is I was kind of extra happy, and we got to Refugee, which at the end would sometimes extend a bit on the guitar, and I don't know what came over me. I looked down the ramp, and it went on for like a mile. You know, and the PA was up here, and the band went on the other side. And I think I'm just going to head down this way. And I had a wireless guitar, and I was just, Refugee all the way. And I kept going. I go, wow, it's a long ways down here. And I kept going, and I got to the end, and I looked back, and the band was like a mile away, waiting for me to end the song, right? And I could see Tom going like. So I ran back as fast as I could, and we ended it. And Tom kind of gave me that look like, okay, don't do that again.
It was sort of your Mick Jagger moment.
Well, I'm not going to go there, but I enjoyed it.
It was Howie's second gig, and I think Stan told me years later, and he was so cool and calm and confident, such a badass, and there's 250,000 people at least. And I think Stan told me that in the middle of the show, he kind of walks over to Stan, who is only his second gig ever playing with Stan, and leans close to him and goes, "You call that drumming?"
Nice.
Because, Howie's delivery was better than mine. It was hysterical.
I have a question for Ryan. Have you heard the recordings from the US Festival? Maybe have you
No,
ever?
I haven't. And,
When you do,
yeah.
you will be horrified to find out. We went and tried to mix it, and there was a guy in the front row with a tambourine.
Oh, no.
And he was just wacka through the whole show. And it went into every mic. We couldn't mix it.
Yeah.
Couldn't get rid of it.
Well, I'm waiting for the AI tambourine removal device, so
I
that would make my
actually-
job a lot easier.
I actually saw the US Festival restored. They did one song they showed us last week, and they up-resed it so you could really see you guys
Was the
up there.
tambourine on beat?
I couldn't hear the tambourine, so they must have gotten a clean source, but I only saw one song. But I will say what struck me about it was I've seen this band my whole life, and obviously I've seen them a lot the last 7 years in the archive. Their hearts are beating visibly. They are breathing because the crowd is giving them so much adrenaline. My dad, who was like unflappable, is like you can see the heart beating out of his chest. The excitement of it,
There's nothing quite like that energy from a crowd. I mean, that's why we do this, when it's like that, it's like from heaven or something. It just gets inside your body, and it makes you play better, really, when it happens. I do remember also, one quickly, backstage, that Dave Davies and Ray Davies got into a terrible fist fight with Bill Graham because they wanted to leave, and it was Bill's car, and they took his car and left. And it was a pretty raucous scene back there.
Wow, the Davies brothers got into a fight. What a shock.
Yeah, surprise, yeah.
The original Oasis brothers, right?
Yep. Adria, you were only 8 at the time of the US Festival. Did you get to go?
I didn't. I watched it on TV though, and enjoyed it with my mom.
You would have had fun hanging out.
That looked like a really cool thing to go to, but the Heartbreakers tended to keep to themselves and focus on being great. It wasn't always about the hang. And my history with them.
The next song we're going to play is the French TV show version of Between Two Worlds, another song that Mike wrote the music to. Will you tell us about it?
Yeah, I like that song quite a bit, and it's kind of overlooked, and it's such a great lyric, A woman's body is only flesh and bone. How come I can't let go? I'm between two worlds. I mean, that says a lot to me. And the music is just like a Stonesy jam, some chords I threw together. And Tom plays a little lead guitar. We had this little amp. It was about that big in the studio that day. And we cut the track live, and he was playing through this little tiny amp, and I guess he got excited at the end, and he just started ripping some Chuck Berry on it. And so it's very spontaneous and frenetic. That track is just, I think the only time we played it in the studio was that one time. I don't think Jimmy liked it much, but it's got a vibe to it that I really like.
Yeah, it might be my favorite thing on the record.
Oh, thanks.
It's a great song.
Lyric, too.
Are we talking about actually, there are 2 versions of this, though.
Yeah,
Playing the French TV version.
The
Yeah,
French
the
TV
new
version, yeah. Like Adria said, we had a long discussion about it, and I'm so glad that it made it onto the album.
Yeah.
It's long. It's a deep track. It's slower than the version on the album, but there's something about it that's just hypnotic, and like Mike says, with the lyric as it is, and just the vibe behind it. It's really cool.
He's got more space to sing the song,
Yeah.
and more swagger to play that riff on that version than the one that made it on the original album.
Yeah, and it's a blues, but it's got a couple of surprising Keith Richards chords here and there. And then the bridge goes into total Neil Young. I don't know what I was thinking, but it all worked together somehow.
That is a different take on the song Ways to Be Wicked from a recording session at a studio in Denver. Ryan, can you talk about finding this recording session?
Yeah, well, you're just going through all the reels, and this one pops up, and it says Applewood Studios, Denver. And it's like, okay, they're making this record at the record plant, and then all of a sudden there's Applewood Studios in Denver.
Is there a year on the box?
Yeah, I think it's around the same time. It's around 82-ish. Don't quote me on it, but around then. And there's all these great tracks. There's some covers on it, and there's some other things. But this track in particular was just so good and so on fire. I just love the attitude of this track. And Adria flagged it too. It was just like, boy, this is a super winner. My question actually is to Mike and Ben. Do you remember, were you guys at Red Rocks and just bored that afternoon or something?
I think I might be wrong, but I know that we went to Colorado to record a song with Stevie Nicks called "I'll Run to You." It might have been around that same.
That was at Caribou.
That was at Caribou.
I remember this day, and I remember that we played really well, but I didn't remember that we had tried to do Ways to Be Wicked.
Do you remember why you went into the studio at all?
I think there was an opportunity and a day off, and we all loved Ways to Be Wicked, Mike again, and we kept trying to get it, and it has come out. One of the versions we did back then, so we clearly did get it, but we didn't know. What a song,
Well, this one's even better.
Well, this is another example of the guys just playing for themselves, just having fun. Just that's what's so fun about some of the tracks on this album.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Heartbreakers trying to find a way to do this song, because the demo was based on a Smokey Robinson song called "Going to a Go-Go." Mm-hmm. The rhythm down, 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 boom, down, down. I visualized it that way, but the Heartbreakers didn't play it that way. It became a Stonesy rave up somehow. And it's on the new Petty Country album with Margot Price. She did a really great version.
So amazing.
And also Lone Justice recorded it back in the days. Great lyric, really great lyric, and I'm glad it's come out.
And Mike plays on the one on Petty Country too, which is really incredible playing. This version it came out of the archive with some weird intro on it that we chopped off, right, to when the song kind of started for real, because they were just jamming.
Yeah, it was just exactly.
And that's where we found it. But when you guys hear it, it's just a barn burner. Like between this and the Wild Thing on here, it's some pretty hard playing. Like
it sent Tom
playing.
to a lyrical area that he didn't normally go, featuring the line, "You ain't afraid to let me have it. You ain't afraid to stick it in."
Exactly. The other line I like is...
I like when your little eyes light up when you're marching me through hell.
Exactly, that's my favorite line.
There's something definitely autobiographical about the lyrics
Inspired.
of this particular song.
Mike,
but it's one of my
knife.
favorites, too.
It's a knife.
A knife. Okay. All right, Ben. You clean it up for me.
We have one more previously unreleased song to play from the deluxe edition of Long After Dark called "One on One." You guys remember this one?
I vaguely remember it. I think I wrote the music.
You did.
It was It was basically a Stonesy thing, and I remember. What I remember about it is it's just, "I'm gonna get you one on one" was the punchline, but Mark Carpenter, who was our assistant tour manager, loved that song, and he said it reminds me of the Lakers.
the Lakers. A
one-on-one I don't think
basketball game.
I don't think it holds up to the quality of some of the other songs on the record, but that's what we did.
That was Stories We Can Tell, recorded live at the Record Plant, 1982, for the French TV show. From the deluxe edition of Long After Dark. This is our final segment together. Mike, Ben, do you remember how you started playing Stories We Can Tell in the live set?
We were in England, I think, and Tom said, "Do you know this Everly Brothers song?" And he taught it to us. John Sebastian wrote it, actually, and the Fabulous Poodles were opening for us, and they had a great fiddle player who looked like Gable named Bobby Valentino. So we did it live on that tour, and I don't know if Stan stayed behind the kit or came up front, because Stan just plays tambourine.
He stayed behind the kit.
But he just sang harmony, and again, that's a case of, it's an Everly Brothers song, and Tom and Stan could sing like brothers, and Howie gets a lot of credit as a great harmony singer, but sometimes people go, "Howie, what a great harmony singer," and forget about Stan, who was remarkable the way he sang with Tom.
And this song, like you said, was written by John Sebastian. Mm-hmm. It might be the best song about life on the road that's ever written. Sitting on a motel, the stories we could tell. And it's very emotional, and I could just share something personal about that song with Stan. I was doing some shows with my band a year ago, and I needed a drummer, and Stan filled in on a couple of shows. And we decided to do that song, just the two of us at the end of the night, just on the mic with one guitar, just me and him. And it was so poignant, because I remember Tom doing it, and the words are so deep. And we both kind of choked each other up doing it. It was really quite a beautiful moment. God bless Stan.
How about a round of applause for Stan Lynch, everybody. Final thoughts on Long After Dark, the deluxe edition. Ryan, I'll start with you.
Well, it's just so fun to go back and find an era and then just go through all this stuff and see what was left on the cutting room floor, so to speak, and pick it up and put it together and get people stuff that they haven't heard before and by people that they love. And like what we said earlier, even the B-sides are really good, and so it's just so fun and such a joy to be able to go through and find this material and bring it to light and make people happy and celebrate this amazing artists and Tom and this amazing band.
Ben?
Well, first off, I want to thank Ryan for finding and restoring so much great stuff and just being a knockout co-producer and recording engineer and everything for so long. And I want to shout out to Adria for being the driving force behind all of this wonderful stuff. All the high quality re-releases and reissues and issues, and just generally doing such a good job keeping the spirit alive and keeping Tom and us here. So thank you.
Yeah.
Long After Dark, it was an amazing period. I always thought it was a really special record. I would have put a couple of different songs on it, but I'm a Virgo and I would always change something. But it sounds like us live. We have Phil Jones playing percussion live, which he did on the road. It's how we sounded live, and it's a really good representation of the bands live in that period. The subsequent tour, especially once we got to Europe, is some of the best live playing that we had done up to that point. And there is film of it. Thanks to this, there's some film of it. And I'm really glad that you guys made sure that it would come out so that we could shine a light on something that I think people just think, oh yeah, you got lucky. And there was a whole lot more going on.
I agree. I think that, this may be thought of as sort of like a filler record or a lesser record. And when you take another look at it, it's a pretty rich record, and it's definitely at a stage in the development of the band becoming the legendary band it becomes. For me, just as it's such an honor to look back at our life and think about being 8 years old and think about how extraordinary these guys were even then, and they were just getting started. And when Ryan and I went through this, and Cameron and I mean, it just deepens my respect for the love they had for each other and the telepathy, and just that they spent their life trying to really uplift people and share their feelings through music. And a lot of people are trying to find meaning in life right now. And I think when you look at people who selflessly make music, especially now where it's not a business that a lot of people get to make money doing it, it's such a gift. It's such an amazing gift to be able to go through these archives and study the craft or the songwriting, or get 3 or 4 really, really good songs you never heard before. I mean, there's no other band that developed a sound and a craft at this level of quality for such a long time. And there's nobody else with the unique problem I have, where it's like, hey, I have literally what sounds like a hit song from 1982 and no one's ever heard it. What do I do with it? I mean, these sorts of problems are really high-class problems. But, you know, there's an extraordinary responsibility to say everything that they did, and obviously some things were lesser, they were left off records, but everything that they did was important. And I think for musicians, it's really important. So I just want to say how honored I am to work in the archive for these guys who I love very much, and to really make sure that they're not ever forgotten, and that the things that they've done are celebrated at the level they deserve.
And Mike?
Long After Dark, what a great title. It says a lot, and that was Tom's genius, is he could say a lot with a few words. You know, and I'll be honest with you, when I heard about this project, I mean, Long After Dark, what that had, You Got Lucky, Change of Heart, and some other stuff on it. I'd forgotten a lot of it, you know, and I got the track list out, and I was going, oh, that one, and that one, and that one. This is a great album, you know? I'm really proud of this. And the last thing I'll say, we went on tour after this album, and one of the songs, called The Same Old You, had a line in it about Let That Sucker Blast. And at that point of our career, we actually had our own plane. First time we got our own plane, and we put Let That Sucker Blast on the side of the plane. That's how, young and out of control we were. But it was a good time in the band. And the film captures the band in that state of mind, really happy with the success and wanting to live up to it. So thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Adria. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everybody, for being here.